Novice Mages, here with LVX777. Okay, so typically on Sundays, we do a live session, but today's a little bit different. Usually, if I have my son over, then I'm not in the most efficient state to do a 6-hour live stream. So, today I think it'll be suitable to at least go through the first portion of this very interesting occult text. I don't think you'll mind. I don't mind. So without further ado, let's jump in. Thanks for being here. Peace and greetings, Alex Cuckoo. Zaire Anu. Peace. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the like button. CJ, peace and welcome. We're going to do the introduction and the foreword and chapter 1. Now, as a heads up, we're going to see in this book is probably the origin of where people apply Pluto and Neptune and Uranus to the tree. I don't really work with that concept at all. However, you'll see it here for sure. This image should look familiar as well. If you guys recall from the Golden Dawn book by Israel Regardie, there's a very similar image here. But this is the one drawn by Austin Osman Spare. And if you don't remember, this is after the fall, right? There's a picture before the fall with Adam and Eve and God at the top, all in harmony and in balance. And then this is after the fall, and we see here Eve reaching down to enjoy the fruits of the garden, and the serpent being released into manifestation. But this is the barrier of Thoth, of the abyss, which the serpent does not cross, because the serpent isn't able to travel at those angles, so he ends up just swallowing his own tail, going around and around in circles, not realizing that the way across is a different angle of existence. And of course, you know, the four creatures of the four elements, or the name Yod He Vav He. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so like I said, we're gonna do the foreword, then we're gonna get into part 1, Trees of Eternity, the introduction, and the first chapter. I'll go ahead and tell you now, there is no guarantee that I'm going to read this whole thing on YouTube. I'm not saying that, but just for today, maybe to stoke your interest, or if you've got the PDF, or if you've got the physical copy yourself. All those draconian books, all those dark side books that deal with clip off and tunnels of set, for the most part, they can owe their influence to this particular text. Anyways, let's jump into it. Nightside of Eden by Kenneth Grant. Ashe to the Order of the Unicorn. Ashe to the Order of the Phoenix. My incense is of resinous woods and gums, and there is no blood therein, because of my hair, the trees of eternity. The goddess knew it. Liber Al. Phoenix Wolfette, peace. Alligator the Greater, peace, peace. Carmesi Ryu, peace. Arthur's foreword. The opinion seems to be held in certain quarters that I have in my previous books revealed a little too much of the mysteries, and that the veil of Isis has been lifted to an almost unseemly height. I therefore reiterate the fact that the mysteries, the true gnosis, are of a predominantly psychosexual nature. I have merely made available, perhaps for the first time in so plain a manner, knowledge which has hitherto been occult, i.e., hidden. In accordance with this fact, I make no apology for having made these mysteries clear to those who possess the necessary insight. That there are dark mysteries here is undeniable, but also there are the keys to their understanding. Perhaps this may be claimed for the present book even more than for the trilogy that preceded it, where certain operative formula were withheld. The keys of practical occultism, whether of mysticism or magic, may be apprehended intellectually by the study of books, but it is on the inner planes alone that their effective workings may be revealed. Please understand that part. You can read all the books you want, and that's awesome, y'all, but it's on the inner planes that this stuff makes sense. And by the way, he mentioned his previous trilogy and this trilogy. Well, just in case you don't know, he's written about 9 books in particular that are considered to be the Typhonian trilogies. And if you don't know, maybe you can screenshot this because here's the order of those books. I mean, you can also Google it, but the first trilogy is The Magical Revival, Aleister Crowley and the Hidden God, Cults of the Shadow. This trilogy begins with Nightside of Eden, Outside the Circles of Time, and then Hecate's Fountain. And then the final trilogy is Outer Gateways, Beyond the Mob Zone, and the Ninth Arch. So that's the order that they should be read in as they were revealed. Just in case you didn't know that. Paulo Soul, peace. Vincent L. Cristol, peace, peace. Daryl Holland, peace. Society Ejects, peace. Happy birthday to 11. OA, greetings. Atropa, peace. Matthew Watson, peace, peace. I promised to my son if he'll listen to me read just one chapter, then I'll let him play on the tablet unrestricted. He has reluctantly agreed. Is that true? Otherwise, the guy on YouTube said a good way to get your child off the tablets to replace all the apps with a Cat in the Hat live reading, but that was a bit too ridiculous. So we're gonna do Nightside Eden instead of Cat in the Hat. I think that's a fair trade. All right, let's keep going. Oops. Oops. All right. That there are dark mysteries here is undeniable, but also there are the keys to their understanding. Perhaps this may be claimed for the present book even more than for the trilogy that preceded it, where certain operative formula were withheld. The keys of practical occultism, whether of mysticism or of magic, may be apprehended intellectually by the study of books, but it is on the inner planes alone that their effective workings may be revealed. Unless the requisite contacts on the inner planes are established in the proper manner, no amount of reading will disclose secrets that are literally indecipherable and therefore truly occult. The safeguards are both automatic and foolproof. Take that into consideration, all right? For any of you guys who still feel like you got some secret book that the masses can't have or else it's all over, it doesn't work like that. I thought like that too. But you can give any book. The magic and the mystery isn't in the book itself. It's in the mind of the person who understands or doesn't understand. I had to learn that the hard way. I still have my secret books though. Got my own purposes. Thank you, Apollo Soul. Again, if you stop by to have a listen to this rare, exclusive occult text, don't forget to hit the like button. And not just because it makes me feel good, but because this app runs on engagement, as I've said a million times before. So when you do hit the like button, it places my video in the categories of videos that are desirable to watch, so to speak. So please, if you haven't already, hit that like button. Gerald Sombright, peace, peace. 40 shot kosher Corver, peace. In view of the foregoing, it may well be asked why one should go to the trouble of expounding mysteries on one level when their full comprehension is possible only on another that is not generally available. The answer is that there exists a large body of individuals, a body which is growing more rapidly than at any other time in human history, that needs a pointer, a mere hint, to increase its sensitivity to inner plane influences. Why do we do this? Not to wake up the masses, but the fact that the mass is growing faster than any type of cancer. That also means that those who have come to complete the work are incarnating at a wider scale as well. And it's work like this that helps to keep them on track. I mean, we'll do what we're going to do regardless, but reminders like this are extremely helpful. It is the task of an initiate who represents a particular magical order to develop the work of his predecessor. In the present instance, that order is the OTO, Ordo Templi Orientis, and the task requires the exposition of the magical current known as 93, or Thelema, which Aleister Crowley received from an extraterrestrial source and which he embodied in the Book of the Law and other writings. The present work, therefore, which is based upon an extremely sinister grimoire known as Liber 231, continues to transmit the 93 current as revived by Crowley in the 20th century. It is inevitable that during the process of a current's evolution, certain aspects found to be obsolete, impractical, or erroneous have to be rejected in favor of more efficient means. This applies with particular cogency in the sphere of magical initiation, as evolved in orders such as the OTO, about which it is here necessary to say a few words. The system of initiation employed by the OTO, of which Crowley was the head in his day, was based on a Masonic structure. Crowley did not alter that structure, although he revised the rituals of the lower degrees of the order after he had been charged with infringing the rights of Orthodox Freemasonry. In other words, Crowley based a lot of his order on the structure of the Freemasons. And the Freemasons was like, oh, you're copying us. We're going to take you to court or whatever. So he had to change things up just a little bit. But check out what he says here. Because look what he said also previously. He's talking about developing an order. And he also talked about how one of the tasks of the initiate is to develop the work of their predecessor. And he also talked about when certain things are obsolete and impractical or erroneous, right? Whenever something we find is now wrong and doesn't work anymore, it has to be rejected in favor of more efficient means. So that means a magical current, a magical school, a magical lineage, whatever, it's a living thing. Things do change. Being in the manifest dimension, things change. So you cannot be confined and bound to the black and white. Things evolve. And if you don't evolve, you become extinct. So what he says here is, since those days, 1915, the entire system of lodge and ritual working has been abandoned. What? Since 1915? And y'all still trying to do it according to the book? According to them old ass books? Let's see what he says here. Since those days, 1915, and this was written in 1975, by the way. The entire system of lodge and ritual working has been abandoned. It was manifestly unwieldy. And owing to its ever-widening international scope, it became impracticable for members to meet at one time and at one place for purposes of magical working. But above all, the Masonic structure no longer accords with new eon consciousness and attitudes. Isn't that interesting? So you see the difference between esoteric and exoteric. The mainstream, by the time the mainstream gets a hold of stuff, it has been long abandoned. So if you see people posting about anything and it's getting a whole lot of attention, that's probably not where the juice is. That should be a new concept. Y'all probably heard that by many other people. Or maybe not. Maybe this is your first time hearing it. MC Maestro, peace, peace. Joshua Martin, greetings. Azrael Walker, greetings. Sly, peace. In other words, the Masonic formula is out of the true and no longer represents the universal design of mystical and magical attainment. Remember when everyone was afraid of the Freemasons? Oh my God, the Freemasons, and they're gonna destroy the world and New World Order, Illuminati, Freemason. Remember all that? And there's still people singing that song to this day. The old eon systems of masonry were based upon the square and founded upon a concept of male supremacy, symbolized by Osiris, Solomon, and other patriarchal figures. I like this part here. The new OTO is founded upon the circle, the goddess, the mother whose child is her symbol. It is thus a seeming revival of an earlier, in fact the earliest, ethos, in that it involves the worship of the primal goddess, who, knowing no god, was later cast out as godless, and therefore, by a mode of the same curious logic, devilish. Talking about Bina here. Psychic evolution, like other forms of evolution, unfolds in a spiral fashion. And the apparent revival of the cult of the mother and her son is on closer inspection seen to have progressed, for the child is no longer the son, but the daughter. Most people ain't gonna understand that. This advance in types is too abstruse for discussion here. It has been explained in my first trilogy, developed in the present book, and mentioned here in order to refute certain criticisms of the new OTO that have been leveled against it by those who fail to understand the spirally progressive evolution and reincarnation of magical formula. The OTO retains its 11 degrees, which are now regarded as lesser circles upon the rim of that greater circle or wheel, which is in process of continual revolution. All the degrees, equidistant from the immobile hub, are therefore equivalent. They rise and fall rhythmically, always approaching or receding from one of the two horizons, the place of rising and the place of setting, the place of birth, which is manifestation, and the place of death, which is non-manifestation. Death was the great illusion of the previous eon, the eon of Osiris. Now, however, in this eon of Horus, which is the eon of the eternal child, life and death are seen as continuous phenomena, or as day and night in the process of self-enlightenment. There's a footnote here for when the mother was called godless and devilish. He says, there was, at that primitive stage of society, no knowledge of the Father on earth, and therefore no Father or God image in heaven, for the gods are but psychic projections. It's the Freemasons and the Illuminati, everybody! Say you don't know what you're talking about without saying you don't know what you're talking about. Demiurge, Illuminati, Freemason, reptilian, clones. The doctrine has been explained in detail in my first Typhonian trilogy. The seeds of it existed in Crowley's inspired writings, but he personally seemed unable to conceive a system of initiation outside the framework postulated by Freemasonry. This is why he perpetuated the old and rigid system described in the Equinox, Volume 3, Number 1, which was upheld after his death by his unquestioning disciple Carl J. Germer. It was therefore left to the present writer to carry the new scheme forward, and this he has been doing for the past 25 years. Letting you know that he's not just some rando who joined the lobby. Anthony Hardy, peace. Cybernet, peace and greetings. The foregoing remarks have been prompted by the many letters concerning the 93 current and the OTO received after the publication of my previous books. It is hoped that the function of the newly organized order will now finally have been clarified. Special thanks and acknowledgments are due to Mr. Michael Berthiaud, head of the Black Snake Cult, for material to which I have referred in the introduction to Part 1 and elsewhere, to Mr. Gary Straw and Miss Margaret Cook and the editors of the Cincinnati Journal of Ceremonial Magic for permission to quote from Liber Pene Praenumbra and material pertaining to the cult of Ma'at, to Mr. Michael McGee for supporting the work of the OTO and his magazine Sophis, and to Mr. John Simmons for allowing me the use of Crowley's writings. Finally, I wish to thank the following artists who have generously permitted the inclusion of their drawings or paintings: Steffi Grant, Margaret Cook, Janice R. Ayers, John Bailey, Michael Berthiaud, Alan Holub, David Smith, and Frederick Seaton. Kenneth Grant, London, 1977. All right, Part 1, Trees of Eternity. Let's get it cracking. Introduction. Jeez, why is it so blurry tonight? Come on, focus. There we go. Kenneth Benefield. Peace, brother. Okay, so the Tree of Life is a key to occult power in both a mystical and a magical sense. Numerous books have been written about the 10 Sephirah and the 22 paths evolved by human consciousness in its attempt to comprehend macrocosmic powers in terms of microcosmic values. Occultism in the West, however, has been dominated by interpretations that take into account only the positive aspect of this great symbol. Love and light, y'all. The other side, the negative or averse side of the tree, has been kept out of sight and sedulously ignored. But there is no day without night, and being itself cannot be without reference to non-being, of which it is the inevitable manifestation. Any allusions to this aspect of the tree and its branches have been subsumed under opprobrious. What a word! Opprobrious. 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 Okay. Any allusions to this aspect of the tree and its branches? Somebody please send me the definition of that. I can deduce based on the context, but I don't think I've ever seen the word opprobrious. Any allusions to this aspect of the tree and its branches have been subsumed under opprobrious heads or related to the infernal realm of the clip-off. the world of the shells or shadows that is none other than our world as we know it. Without the transforming light of magical consciousness. Soul's Searching, thank you. Soul Searching says expressing scorn or criticism. Opprobrious means expressing scorn or criticism. Okay. Okay. Full magical initiation is not possible without an understanding of the so-called cliphotic paths, which are in practice as real as the shadow of any object illuminated by the sun. In other words, the well-lit highways of Horus, the paths that man has projected to connect the cosmic power zones, Sephiroth, with his own consciousness, have their counterparts in the tunnels of Set, a dark web or nocturnal network of paths, the very existence of which is denied or ignored by those who are unable to realize the total truth of the tree and its validity for those who would climb even its lower branches. Nothing new under the sun. Look at how we had the dark web even in the 70s. And no one ever thought that if we have the tunnels of Set, then that must mean that the tunnels of Horus are the 22 paths of the regular side of the tree. And notice also how he described them as the Sephiroth as cosmic power zones. And the paths are pretty much the, if you think of a balloon with a string attached that a person holds, those strings are the symbols of consciousness, experiences of consciousness that we use to hold onto the balloons of those cosmic power zones. Good stuff. Swami Hood, nigga. Peace. The mind is beguiled with promises of cosmic consciousness, and the senses are lulled to sleep or bewitched by the constant reiteration that if we spread our wings and fly, we shall attain to the topmost branches in the space of a single lifetime. But do these who speak so glibly of enlightenment, and who brush aside with apparent ease the averse sides of the power zones with which they boast familiarity, do they really imagine that one side only exists? It is futile and false to imagine a coin with one side only. It is only after mastering the world of shadows within himself in the form of the archdemons, anger, lust, and pride, that man may truly claim to be lord of the shining wheels or discs, in other words, the 10 Sephiroth. It was partly due to Frater Achard's work on the tree, such as the anatomy of the body of God, being the supreme revelation of cosmic consciousness. He references Frater Achard a lot. I mean, a lot. I guess that's worth checking out. But yeah, it was partly due to Frater Achard's work on the tree that I first realized the multidimensional nature of its many aspects. It then assumed for me a totally different form. It was no longer a mere diagram symbolizing a precise, though complex system of spiritual attainment. It came alive, rounded out, and appeared as different from a diagram as a country from its map. The map is not the territory, right? He said it came alive, it rounded out, and appeared as different from a diagram as a country from its map. I became aware that the tree had not only a top and a bottom, but a front and a back. And although Achard did not develop his thesis in quite the way in which I then began to view the matter, he was nonetheless aware of its backward implications. This fact may be appreciated by a study of his formula of reversal in connection with the magical words of power and his interpretation of certain verses of the Book of the Law. It struck me at that time that if the Sephiroth were seen as globes rather than wheels or discs, The paths deepened accordingly and appeared not as flat aridities between the power zones, but as tunnels boring deeply into space. For the tree as a whole is rooted in the inner and mystical voids of multidimensional consciousness, which cannot be adequately represented by a two-dimensional diagram. Boy, what? So this makes the cover of the book more important. The cover of the book, the Kabbalistic Tarot. The big blue book, if anyone has that. Sunshine Chick, peace, peace. What page? This is page number 3. This is the introduction. Introduction. If you don't have the Kabbalistic Tarot, then you got this picture right here, which is first seen in Israel Regardi's The Golden Dawn book. So I was really happy to see that he put that on the cover of this. But notice now, normally we've got an image of the tree as a flat image, 10 circles and 22 lines. But it occurred to him that they were not flat circles, they were spheres, which means that the path would stop being straight lines and end up being literal tunnels. Man, listen here. Listen here. I'm gonna go back and read that again now that you have that image in your mind. I had it in my head the whole time. So he said, it struck me at that time that if the Sephiroth were seen as globes rather than wheels or discs, the paths deepened accordingly and appeared not as flat aridities between power zones, but as tunnels boring deeply into space. For the tree as a whole is rooted in the inner and mystical voids of multidimensional consciousness, which cannot be adequately represented by a two-dimensional diagram. So look at what he said also just a few lines before that. He said that if the tree was not 10 circles and 22 lines, but actually 10 spheres, that means that there's going to be more than 22 paths. They've gone from lines to being tubes and tunnels. And he also said there's a top and a bottom, which means that there's a front, a back, and a left and a right. Those of you who took the inner light activation system recall that as part of the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, we employed this three-dimensional tree around ourselves. Makes sense? Doesn't it make sense? Have you guys been doing this in your meditation? When I said I had this image in my head the whole time, that's what I meant. Spontaneously project this image around your body. And watch what it magnetizes. Front side and a back side. That's the clip off. The side that you're not looking at. T. Fowler, peace. Pablo X9, peace. Alora, good to see you, peace. Nuru, peace, peace. I am fully aware that the averse regions of the power zones are dangerous territory. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And at the outset, I would remind those who feel that such an exploration had better not be made that one cannot begin this initiation. Wait, let me say that over again. I am fully aware that the averse regions of the power zones are dangerous territory. And at the outset, I would remind those who feel that such an exploration had better not be made that one cannot begin this initiation or journey inward as one begins one's ascent from Malkuth. The usual mode of procedure is to ascend the tree from Malkuth to Kether through the middle pillar. For only by projecting consciousness through Doth, the 11th power zone, the gate of the abyss, can one enter the kingdom of infernal spaces that is under the dominion of Koron zone. One has therefore to be familiar with these paths before one can enter the deep place where they continue. not as well lit ways of Horus plainly signposted in the light of day, but as the tunnels of Set that turn and twist like a serpent, or like the entrails of the nameless god of the Gulf, whose darkness makes possible, by contrast, their light counterparts. If this is borne in mind, it will not be necessary to charge me with irresponsibility toward those who may have been lured, even against their will, to commence a journey for which they are improperly equipped, and which may therefore prove fatal. Fatal, 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 fatal. Alligator says that clip off got that front, back, and side to side, man. MC Maestro says Coronzon equals Horon, Tamasic aspect of Horus. Thank you. Monica Lawan, peace. Society Eject says, so I'm thinking, is there multiple front and back sides? So I would also suggest looking at the cover of the book that W.E. Butler did on Kabbalah. What's that book called? Let me grab it real quick. Magic in the Kabbalah. That's what it's called. Malkuth in the center, Kether on the outside. If you really want to get funky with it, yes, there's multiple front, backs, and side to sides. It isn't clean, cut, and dry. But as long as you remember the original framework of it, then it isn't as confusing as it might seem. Veronica, peace, peace. One other observation seems relevant. During the course of writing the 3 volumes that constitute my first Typhonian trilogy, an adept named Michael Berthiaud wrote to me from Chicago. His letter was the beginning of a fruitful correspondence, during the course of which he sent me the great papers of his secret society, the Monastery of the Seven Rays, which includes the cult of the Black Snake. His letter was the beginning of a fruitful correspondence, during the course of which he sent me the great papers of his secret society. I found to my surprise that he had, quite independent of my own researches, formulated a conception of the tree of life that comported, among its many facets, the backwards paths that I here call the tunnels of Set. Although there is no precise alignment of our respective theories, it is perhaps interesting to note how the 2 conceptions confirm and supplement one another. I therefore take this opportunity of drawing the reader's attention to Mr. Berthiaud's treatment of the subject. This brings me to the final point. Listen close, ladies and gentlemen. Unless occultism becomes creative in the sense of opening up new approaches, modifying and developing traditional concepts, and generally revealing a little more of that supreme goddess whose identity is hidden behind the veil of Isis, Kali, Nuit, or Sothis, there will be a stagnation in the swamp of beliefs rendered inert by the recent swift acceleration of humanity's consciousness, which is little short of miraculous. If the science of the unmanifest is not to remain grounded at a prepubescent stage, while the manifested sciences soar into space, the mature occultist must put aside the toys of superstition and face fearlessly the trees of eternity, whose trunks and branches glow with solar fire, but whose roots are nourished in the dark. Thank you, MC Maestro. Mystical Koala says, Peace, Trav. So happy you're doing this reading. Just wondering if you're going to continue doing the Gold Book readings. I'm getting a lot out of watching the streams. It's possible. I think originally I wanted to stop at the practice part. You know, there's a theory and practice. We read the theory and now it's at the practice part. I was going to stop there. I may continue unless I decide to do a different book, such as this one. This is a test. This is only a test. I don't have plans on reading this entire book on the live stream. But even as he just said in this last paragraph, it's better to be looking forward than to be looking backward. Let me read that again. Unless occultism becomes creative in the sense of opening up new approaches, modifying and developing traditional concepts, and generally revealing a little more of that supreme goddess whose identity is hidden behind the veil of Isis, Kali, Nut, or Sothis. Unless you do that, there will be a stagnation in the swamp of beliefs rendered inert by the recent swift acceleration of humanity's consciousness, which is little short of miraculous. The fact that the collective consciousness is actually evolving at a rapid pace. It's moving so rapidly that, hell, people don't even realize it. And in a way, we're scrambling for distractions so that we can stay where we were. Interesting. But despite all that, we are evolving collectively. So if we refuse to look forward and dance with the change, we're going to drown into the vast amounts of data that comprise what we call the past, which is also very cliffotic. Gang Stalking Simulations says, would you read the Goetias online? Specifically, which book is that? Chapter 1, The Place of the Cross. The Sephiroth were described by the ancient Kabbalists as divine emanations of the Absolute. The word Sephiroth is the plural form of the Hebrew word Sephirah, meaning number or emanation. The 10 Sephiroth represent the emergence from the Ein, the nothingness which is beyond unity, via the scale of the numbers 1 to 9 of the divine vibration, and its return again to the void via Malkuth, where unity, 1, becomes naught, 0, again. During the course of the development of occult science, the numbers 1 to 10 came to signify centers or zones of cosmic power, and in order to bring their nature within range of human comprehension, they were allotted various planetary representatives. Let me read that again in case you might have zoned out. During the course of the development of occult science, the numbers 1 to 10 came to signify centers or zones of cosmic power. All right, for everyone who's trying to figure out numerology, it's this simple. The numbers 1 to 10 came to signify centers or zones of cosmic power, and in order to bring their nature within range of human comprehension, which means that the true nature of the numbers 1 through 0, the true nature of cosmic principle, cosmic intelligence, the true nature of all that is beyond human comprehension. So we literally have to develop sciences, symbols, and patterns for what? To bring their nature within the range of human comprehension. The range of human comprehension is kind of it's kind of tight, kind of small, kind of local. So we do anything we can to bring cosmic principles down. And as I said, we're evolving as a collective. That's true. And for everyone who says, I don't need to read no book, I can just go within. I just go within. And that's true. Yeah, you do go within. But the thing is, when you go within, you don't know where you're going. So, in order to bring these concepts down to human comprehension, this is why we use different symbols and sigils and rituals and other representative factors. But it's not as simple as, oh, I just go within. If that was the case, then, we wouldn't be out here we wouldn't be out here complaining about life, basically. Laura says, sounds like some Kundalini talk there. Oh, yes. Matthew Watson says, I vote Demons of Magic. Gang Stalking Simulation says, that book is on Amazon. I didn't get that yet, but I will because I'm under attack by these bots and gang stalkers. That's quite a belief that you have there, my friend. Or should I say that's quite a frame that you have wrapped around reality. And we all have frames. Some support the image in constructive ways. Some take away from the beauty of the painting that's placed inside the frame. But it is the gallery owner's right to place whatever frame he wants on the picture that he's displaying for the audience. I like to change my frames from time to time. But even my frames are wrapped up in an even bigger frame, which I maintain 100% of the time, even when I'm asleep. And that ensures that I'm always reminded that whatever frame I operate from is the frame of my choosing. And that makes it A-OK. Al Dickey, peace. MC Maestro says Mathers and Crowley drops the most high magic concepts. Indeed, my friend, indeed. Okay, so here's where he talks about Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus. So I'm gonna give it a good, open-minded listen, because stuff that I learned and where I came from, we don't include the planets past Saturn, but let's just see what he has to say about that. Pluto represents the outermost power zone, the pylon set at the utmost rim of the planetary system, beyond which stretch the vasts of outer space. When applied to the microcosm, the world of human consciousness, Pluto represents the pylon at the gates of the sanctuary of inner space. Kether, the crown of the system in the outer and in the inner, is thus equivalent to the height and depth of physical and psychological space. So when you think about it, physically, Pluto does represent the outer limits of our reality. Pluto literally represents the border and the edge of the underworld to the human race. That's the furthest that most of us can think of. Pluto. That's the furthest that most of us can think of. So if you take that range, right, as the highest and the lowest, and you pretty much trace a circle around that and then make a sphere out of it, that's the bubble that most of us, that's the limit that we can extend to. After that, insufficient data. To be honest, outside of our hometown is insufficient data for most people. But as a collective, I can see what he's saying here. It is essential to grasp this fact in order to understand why Malkuth, the 10th and final Sephiroth, is equivalent to that which, for want of a better term, may be indicated by the term antimatter. So now Malkuth is antimatter. Actually, I'll keep the camera on this while I read, if you guys don't mind. And notice again, in this particular diagram, we'll see that the star and the emperor have switched places. You'll see that often. Let's continue though. So, Malkuth be indicated as antimatter. I say indicated because neither Kether nor Malkuth can be described in terms of mundane logic. The Kabbalists allude to Kether by such titles as the Ancient of Days, the White Head, the Supreme Point, or also known as the Bindu, the indivisible point of the Tantras, right? Similarly, in the esoteric teachings of Tantricism, Buddhist and Hindu alike, nirvana and samsara are considered to be identical. And he says literally the moving thing, the world appearance, this universe. Nirvana, samsara, Kether. Yet the concept of samsara is not strictly speaking confined to Malkuth, for all the other Sephiroth up to and including Kether form part of it. In other words, they are all concepts and therefore objectivizations of subjectivity. As objects, they are illusory. For Ain, subjectivity alone is, and the nature of its being is not. But as an approximate analogy, it is useful because it brings Oriental doctrine to alignment with the Western occult tradition. There are innumerable treatises on the Kabbalistic tree of life, and it is presumed that the reader is acquainted with some of them. It is not intended here to go over ground already covered many times before, but to analyze the Kabbalistic scheme as a map of cosmic power zones, interacting and impinging upon man at every point of his being. For there is no single element in man that does not vibrate in accord with the rhythm of the numbers 1 to 9 and their modifications. It is evident that no human being, however advanced he may be towards the attainment of cosmic consciousness, can transcend Kether and explore the trans-Plutonic voids, either in the outer spaces of the physical universe or in the inner spaces of his own inscrutable individuality. To do so would imply that he had quitted altogether and forever the realm of human consciousness. Do you hear that? Do you hear that? Dion Fortune says, no man, my brother, no man touches Kether and comes back. That's not a challenge. She's saying that it's an experience that is so distant from the human experience that you are no longer human. You don't come back. It's as good as dying. When you reach that level of enlightenment, that's not when you come back into your body from. So if you ever hear anybody talking about, I've been to Kether, you can smile and nod and understand that the more confidently they say that is to the degree that they don't know what they're talking about. Swami Hood nigga says, but how can she know if she was alive at the time of her saying that? Vincent L. Cristol says, how would she know? It's a good question. Read the Mystical Kabbalah, and for extra credit, read the Cosmic Doctrine, and then tell me what you find from those. Tian Pomeroy, peace. Wolfen Syrian 777 says, Nightside of Eden, it's about that time. Wahahaha, indeed. Also, like the video if you like this video. Chances are, if you don't have this PDF, then hell, even if you do have this PDF, did you crack it open yet? I mean, keep it real too. Dara Holland, peace. Poison Ivy. I was just showing my son that video today. Laura says, hey man, I've been to Kether. I know all this. Just tell me what candle to use. Right, exactly. Tahe L, peace. Shinobi, I know be Hope and Walsley, peace, peace. Anna Molly, peace. But yeah, to answer your question, dudes who asked, just read what she wrote about it, and then you'll see why I say that. Chapter 15 in the Mystical Kabbalah is about Kether, and there are other authors who've also written about that cosmic power zone. Let's continue though. There is no single element in man that does not vibrate in accord with the rhythm of the numbers 1 to 9 and their modifications. It is evident that no human being, however advanced he may be towards the attainment of cosmic consciousness, can transcend Kether and explore the transplutonic voids, either in the outer spaces of the physical universe or in the inner spaces of his own inscrutable individuality. To do so would imply that he had quitted altogether and forever the realm of human consciousness, perhaps to become one with God. For whatever that term may mean, the state which it implies can have no possible meaning within the framework of dualistic experience, and is therefore without the scope of the present inquiry. As if to compensate for this forbidden journey, however, the tree provides a single loophole through which the human will may project itself. And it is this loophole in space, this hole in space, that forms the outer pylon hidden in the abyss of consciousness, the unconscious. Which separates the supernal Sephirotic triad, Kether Chokmah from the remainder of the tree. To go astray in this desert of Set is to become what is known as a black brother. His fate is perhaps unique. So listen, y'all. If even a sip of Doth in the Abyss drastically has a drastic effect on your mind, if just a tiny sip of Doth, I'm talking about a 30-second path sip of Doth, if just that has enough to radically change your reality, don't tell me about no damn Kether. Don't even say that word. Like, when you look at this tree of life, it is a map, and it's a map of degrees from pure dense matter to the most high concept of spirit. And the thing is, the higher up you go, the further you get away from matter. And the thing is, the further up you go, the wider the distances. So by the time you make it to Doth, which is 1, 2, 3 steps before we talk about Kether, you're entering a space now that is so spread out. To cross this space, you won't survive. And I talked about this already. I already talked about this in the video I did previously. Think about how in these movies, when they do that deep space travel, they have to go into cryo freeze and freeze the body, right? What would happen if they didn't freeze the body? You be living in that spaceship by yourself for 60, 100 years or whatever. You get old and you die. You won't make it. So they literally have to like modify and put their consciousness on hold, put their body on hold. They have to enter into a new state of existence just to make that trip. Likewise, when going across the abyss, we're talking about something that is foreign, something that is so vast. The brain breaks under the strain. And that's just the abyss. We didn't even get to Bina or Hakma yet, let alone Kether. So it's not so much like, well, what does this person know? How can they say this to me or whatever? It's not so much that. It's just got to understand what we're talking about. We're talking about a distance that is so vast. We're talking about so much data that the human mind isn't designed to handle that. We break under pressure from ordinary everyday stuff. But trying to comprehend 60 years of data sitting in one spot, no human brain is able to do that. That's why we create technology and computers to be able to process and crunch vast amounts of data for us. We're not going to evolve without technology. Vincent Del Cristo says time doesn't exist on the other side, though. That's exactly right. And since the human mind has been conditioned to exist within time in every incarnation, what do you think the human mind is going to do outside of time? If a fish has been conditioned to live in water its whole life, what does it do when it's taken out of water? How does the human mind function outside the circles of time? What's that even like? Well, I'll tell you what it's like. You start to disintegrate. You said time doesn't exist. That's right. That's why you don't exist. That's why I don't exist. That's why ego doesn't exist, because it exists within time. So if time is an illusion, you're an illusion also. I'm an illusion also. And to be faced with that reality means that inevitably the ego dissolves. It vanishes. It dissolves. So who can keep themselves under that kind of pressure? Who can do that? That's what I'm talking about. Like you got to expand past anything that you're familiar with to really grasp what these people are talking about. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Alligator says the black brother, Kenneth Grant, is all right with me. You heard what Bobby said. These people know. Society Eject says you're right. They do put the body in a semi-coma just to travel because the body and the mind cannot handle that shit. Right. Right. So you're exactly right, Vincent Del Crystal. Time doesn't exist on the quote unquote other side, and you establish your existence through time. The only reason you know that you exist is because of time and space. Right. So if we take that out the equation, what's left, man? What's left? Right? It's a scary thought, but look, man, some people, when their time is finished in the body, they're gonna find themselves in this space, and they will be dissolved within what we know of as 5 minutes. It's not gonna be a very long fight. The scramble will be real, and more than likely, uh, if I could assume anything, it would cause a person to quickly try to manifest themselves again, to quickly try to reincarnate into anything they can get, because this incorporeal existence is just too much, man. All right, let's keep going. To go astray in this desert of Set is to become what is known as a black brother. His fate is perhaps unique. Now, that unique fate he talks about in part 2 of this book. So maybe those of you who have this text can get impatient and skip ahead. The name given by Kabbalists to this gate of the Gulf is Doth, and in occult tradition, it is the place at the end is the place at which the eight-headed dragon of the deep disappeared behind the tree when it scaled it in an unsuccessful attempt to strike at the very heart of God, or Kether. Wonderful, wonderful. And think about all the people you ever heard of talk about Doth. Besides myself, the only person I ever heard talk about Doth and actually make anyways, it helps to contemplate these symbols and what they actually represent, because the quality of your information that you're working with is going to determine the quality of your success. So we think about that dragon. We think about that picture that was in the beginning of this book, right? Notice here, and how I mentioned that this is after the fall of man. That's what this symbolizes. And notice that the serpents, this is also in Revelation and the Bible, right? The serpents can only go up to Doth in the abyss. They can't cross that abyss because, like I said, that vast amount of space, that vast amount of data to comprehend, it ends up chasing its own tail. That's the Ouroboros, or whatever it is. Ouroboros. That's why the serpent's swallowing its tail, because that's all it can find in that abyss. It just continues repeating itself. To go beyond that abyss, it has to exist in a different angle. The success rate of traversing that path is not very high. So, the name given by Kabbalists to this gate of the Gulf is Doth, and in occult tradition, it is the place at which the eight-headed dragon of the deep disappeared behind the tree when it scaled it in an unsuccessful attempt to strike at the very heart of the godhead, Kether. The word Doth instantly suggests the name of that other gateway, which opens upon the void of personal extinction. In other words, death. These terms, Doth and death, do indeed have a mystical affinity, and it is no refutation of this fact that the words are in different languages, for the salient elements of both words, Da'ath, are Kabbalistically equivalent to the number 474, the letter A being taken as Ayin, 70. One of the meanings of Doth is knowledge, right? It is called the Sephira that is not a Sephira. In one aspect, it is the child of Chokmah and Bina. In another, it is the eighth head of the stooping dragon, raised up when the tree of life was shattered and the macroprosopus set a flaming sword against microprosopus. This is explained in due course. By permutation, Doth equates to OTHD, another Hebrew word meaning a ram or a he-goat. It is also the number of the Greek word duo, which means two. For an explanation of the duality in terms of the double or devil symbolized by the ithyphallic goat, see the book The Magical Revival. The double is the eidolon, doll, or shadow glyphed by the ancient Egyptians by the Tat, which is equivalent to Doth. Doth is also the home of Choronzon, the guardian of the gate of the abyss. Gathering together these various meanings, we see that the knowledge of Doth, or death, is of the nature of the secret of duality, represented by the shadow or magical double, whereby man overcomes death and enters in at the age of Doth to explore the abode of Choronzon, the desert of Set. Doth, as the child of Chokmah and Bina, Chokmah is wisdom, Bina is understanding, is attributed to Uranus, which indicates the highly explosive nature of this knowledge. Neptune as Chokmah is a form of Hadit, and Saturn as Bina is a form of Nuit. This knowledge thereof is the knowledge of life, which is also the knowledge of death, and as such it suggests the sexual nature of its formula. The Book of the Law, Hadith, declares I am the flame that burns in every heart of man, and in the core of every star. I am life and the giver of life, yet therefore is the knowledge of me the knowledge of death. Let's continue. Alright, so I'm a hood nigga who's asking the basic questions from 2 years ago. Unless these died and came back to tell us, how can they even know? Why am I the only one asking these fundamental questions? Mainly because we already been through all this, man. And I understand, you know what I'm saying? But we already asked these questions a long time ago. You said books written by people you never knew personally but take their word to be absolute. Come on, fam, let's experience the same thing is foolish. And that's the thing. I say that we've gone over this 2 years ago because what makes my channel different from many others is we don't just go off of what people said in their books. We do meditate, we do practice this stuff in our own time, and then we come together and share our experiences. So absolutely none of what I talk about or the people on my channel talk about is what somebody else said in the book, and that's it. Now maybe you haven't experienced this stuff, so I can understand why you would have these questions. But at this point in the game, reading you know, Typhonian trilogy type content, this is past that those type of questions. Like those type of questions are back for like when we were reading the Kabbalion and like what else? I don't know, the beginning Ophiel books and stuff like that. But getting into this, it, that was for like the low magic stuff. When we're getting to like basically this stuff right here, I mean, if you haven't experienced it yourself, then of course you'd ask that. So the best thing to do is to try to figure out how you can get that experience yourself. Father Divine is asking, I want to know, do you read 50 pages or just a chapter a day? I don't know why you're asking me that multiple times. Are you even listening to this book? What is going on, man? What is happening here? Dreamwise, peace, bro. What is going on? Swami Hood Nigga says, I appreciate it, bro. I mean no offense, just trying to understand is all. And thank you for what you do. Yeah, no offense, my friend. Like I said, I understand. This is the same type of questions that I would have asked, I have asked, and many other people on my channel have asked already. But I don't address that stuff anymore because, like I said, for the most part, we've already been over this many times. Like, I've been doing this for a while. I didn't just open up a YouTube channel yesterday and start talking heavy shit. I think I'm well verified in what I do. And if that isn't clear to you, then, like I said, after testing out some of this stuff yourself, you'll start to see. All right, back to the subject at hand. Caesar, peace, and welcome back. If for death we read doth, the verse assumes a profounder meaning, for it is then seen to be a secret key of Hadith's function. Hadith is Ch1 or Set, lord of the desert, and the great gate of the gulf whose guardian is Choronzon. The word or name Choronzon is in all probability a corruption of Khosar, which is the god of Atlantean magic. See the Cult of the Shadow for a fuller definition. Whose symbol is the trident, equates him with the Neptune Nodens, the god of the deep. Thus, Neptune and Nuit, Saturn, the dual principles of life, combine to form the averse or Choronzonic principle of Doth and death. For this knowledge, Doth is of the averse, reverse, or backside of the tree. Now, since we went through a lot of the Tantric Vedic information ourselves, right? Since we're not just taking one author's word for it, we understand that the trident also represents the three gunas, which are the three aspects of reality: generator, operator, destroyer, right? Up, down, and balance. So, with that being understood, and seeing also that what they're referring to as Karanzan, the god of the deep, whose symbol is a trident, and that also equates him with Neptune, we can also understand that this is an equation to Prakriti herself, who's also represented by the trident, who is composed of Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva, the three gunas. Doth was described by the Kabbalists as the false Sephirah because it had no place in the scheme of numbers from 1 to 10, no place that is in the dimension represented by the front or reverse of the tree. So remember what is said in these texts, how there are 10 Sephirah, not 9, not 11, right? That's in the Yetziratic text, which is the fundamental text on Kabbalah. It says that there are 10 Sephirah, not 11, not 9. So that's not just saying, hey, this is the rule, don't change the rules. What they're referring to is that the numbers 0 through 9 represent specific vibrations of the whole circle, specific ones. So 11, that's not a specific vibration within the circle. That's something that's operating at a completely different angle. It is included, but it's not included. It's a paradox. And with it being a paradox, that's why it is known as the backside or the averse or the reverse side of the tree. So again, Doth was described by the Kabbalists as the false Sephirah. It's not really there because it had no place in the scheme of numbers, right? Because it's all, and here's another thing, asking about the verification of this stuff. None of this is like one person stood up and said, oh, this is this and this. Like, it's not about what one person said. The way that this particular system works is that it can be cross-referenced and cross-verified with different modalities. For example, numerology is one way, astrology is one way, tarot is one way, right? The elements are one way. There's a bunch of different symbolic factors that you can cross-reference and check to make sure that what you're experiencing makes sense according to the pattern. So it's what some of these authors have written in their books is from their experience within the context that's being represented here. You get what I'm saying? This is about context, never about content. If you get stuck on the content, you'll get lost. It's the structure of it. If you focus on the structure, then eventually, when you learn the structure, you can tell immediately whether this is legit or not. But if you question everything based on the content, you're at the mercy of how persuasive the speaker is. I mean, keep it real. How do you know what the hell I'm saying is true? If you don't have some type of framework to back it up or to verify for yourself. So that's what I mean. And again, that's why I stick with Kabbalah like this, because it has shown to me experientially that it serves as a solid framework to cross-reference and verify every aspect. And also that helps. So say for example, you said it was 444 when you said that, where I'm at in the West Coast, numerology. Okay, right. So if you understand numerology, then that's one way that you can cross-reference check, right? So if you understand numerology, Kether is represented by the number 1. So take that and then look at all the rest of the spheres of the tree of life, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then just look at the type of experiences that you have and you understand dealing with the numbers 1 versus, like, say, 10, 9, 8, or 7. 1 is indivisible. You can't divide 1. Anything multiplied by 1 is itself. 1 is in such a way that it's like such a stable element. It's uncorruptible. It's unchanging. It's perfect. And it's everything. 1 is so close to 0, it's crazy. 1 is so close to 0 is crazy, right? Now that's a whole different experience from 2. You can divide 2 halves, duality. 2, you can take that in an infinite number of places. Then we talk about 3. Now we really mixing it up. Then we talk about 4 and the 4 elements. Talk about 5 and see all these different numbers have so many different. That's what they mean when they say the numbers have different vibrations of reality, right? When you think of 7, certain things come to mind, right? You got the 7 days of the week. You got the 7 primary colors. So if you think about the primary colors and the days of the week, you're thinking about structure and how things are kind of laid out. The 7 hermetic principles, structure and how things are laid out for you, right? And 7 would be represented as Netzach or Venus or art or intuition and instinct and things like that. It's a structure where things are set in place for you. A basic instruction before leaving Earth. That's 7. But again, back to 1. None of that comes to mind when you think about 1. 1 includes all that. 1 is all that. If you divide 7, if you multiply 7 by 1, you still get 7. Anyways, and look, we got 71 likes. Good question. Seriously, because that helps to even give yourself something to use to kind of dig deeper into this. 7, we can also talk about the chakras like he's about to get into right here. Basic programming. That's what the 7 represents. All right, so the false Sephirah, 11. So in consequence, it was considered to be the 11th Sephirah. 11 is the number of magic, of energy tending to change, which is the precise formula of the operation of Thoth, and the reason for its association with death as a supreme type of change. Thoth, 11, death, the supreme type of change. You don't have to die to know that. There's a supreme type of change that happens at the level of Thoth. There's a supreme type of change that happens at the abyss. And the reason that it is an abyss, because like what you said that nobody died and came back to tell us. Well, that's because the gulf, the abyss of death is so deep, so wide, so vast, that even if you were able to stay alive, you're not coming back as the same thing, right? Just like staying alive if you were still alive and they buried you, let's just say like you couldn't use your body, right? And there you are sitting on the operating table or whatever, and they bury you underground. How... let's just pretend like you don't need food or whatever. How long do you think you're going to last down there? Oh, you're going to last, sure, but you're going to become something different. Hell, you might be forced to learn astral projection at that point. See, life doesn't extinguish. It's a fire. It doesn't just go out. Energy changes form. Now, you said that no one has died and come back. Well, we don't quite know that. They didn't come back in the same form, I'll tell you that for sure. But we don't know if they didn't come back. Maybe there are mysteries and secrets of Thoth that can enable one to cross that abyss, to cross that gulf. But do we even know if learning that science is worth it? Let's continue. In the tantric scheme of chakras, or microcosmic power zones, Thoth is attributed to the zone of the word, the Vishuddha, or the throat center. See Cults of the Shadow, Chapter 1, for a detailed account of this zone and its relation to the eightfold cross of the Kalas. This center represents speech, but the word in its occult sense of the true voice, Ma Karu, may be uttered only by a magus, whose natural provenance is the second Sephirah, Chokmah, assigned to Hadit. The 2 and the 11 thus meet in Doth, the sphere of knowledge. For knowledge is only possible, only where duality, duo, prevails. These two, subject and object, unite, and their union causes change, which is the formula of magic. Union occurs in consciousness, where the act is reflected as in a mirror, and the act opens the gate through which the will, hadith, is projected. Haha, and I get to be a Gemini. Sweet. Union occurs in consciousness, where the act is reflected as in a mirror, and the act opens the gate through which the will, the hadith, is projected. Its image appears in the mirror world, known in some mystery schools as the mirror fantastique. See Michael Berthiaud, Great Papers of the Monastery of the Seven Rays. Its image appears in the mirror world at the back of the tree and in reverse, for in that dimension time flows backwards, and man reverts to the ape. The cynocephalus was chosen, therefore, as a magical symbol of the word by the ancient Egyptians, who attributed it to the moon god, Thoth. In case you don't know what's going on here, we know that Thoth, in every god or deity or concept, has multiple symbols. Two of the symbols of Tahuti or Thoth is not only the abyss, but also the ape. The ape. One of the symbols of Thoth was the ape. The name of this god is equivalent to Doth. The letter D is the later and elated form of T. Thoth, Doth, knowledge. Oh, come on now, come on. So y'all thought it was Hod. Y'all thought it was Hermes. Nah. Doth and Thoth. I never knew that connection. Interesting. And see, this is what the footnotes are for. So you can go look it up yourself. The letter D is the later and elated form of T. See, that's something you can go look up to see for yourself. Doth and Thoth. And it is significant that the moon is attributed to the Kala that rays from Kether through the abyss to the solar or heart center of the cosmos, represented on the tree by the Sephirah Tifereth, which typifies enlightened human consciousness. The reflection of the sun, human consciousness, in the waters of the abyss is thus symbolized by Thoth and his cynocephalus as the man and his dog reflected in the moon. Excuse me, not just an ape. The cynocephalus, it's actually I think it's a dog-headed ape. Yeah, it's a dog-headed ape specifically. And those have connection to the moon, like he just said. And even if you look at the moon tarot card, you're going to see a dog and a wild dog, aka a wolf. The cynocephalus, or dog-headed ape, utters the word of the Magus, Hadith Chokmah, in reverse. Friedrich Ch1 had an inkling of these mysteries, and it led him to enunciate his formula of reversion. At about the same period, the artist Austin Spare, working along similar lines, realized that in order to become God, man must regress to the primal or original state of consciousness. See the Book of Pleasure by Austin Osman Spare. This is the ultimate rationale behind the attempts by occultists of all ages to leap backward and inward to the interior depths of the tree, thereby reverting to the primeval state of consciousness before Kether transmitted the current of manifestation from the eye of the void, Ein. Ein means nothing. Void is the non-manifest. It also means an I, Ayin, which it has the numerical value of 70. For the significance of this important number, see later. Many magicians go astray on that backward journey. Yes, sir. I'll be having to put that thing down. Vincent Del Cristo says, how can the dragon get past the abyss if the gate is closed? Well, that's the thing. The dragon cannot get past that gate. That's the symbolism between the dragon and the bottomless pit. It doesn't ascend. It doesn't get out of that bottomless pit unless it evolves into something new. The same as you being buried underground and you're still alive. Your body's not going to get out of there. But that doesn't mean you can't get out of there. Dreamwise says Kenneth Grant, Aleister Crowley 100. Yes, sir. See, there's something special about magicians and maguses or whatever who work with this type of magic, and you can tell because there's something about them where it's like, I don't know if you're crazy or if you're a genius. I legit don't know if you're crazy or if you're a genius. That's a telltale sign that somebody's been working with the fucking clip off and doth. When you have to ask that question seriously, I don't know if you are insane or if you are brilliant. That's when you know somebody's been swimming in that abyss. Woo! Well, I tell you what. Alligator says, I thought Thoth was associated with Hod. Indeed. And which Sephiroth is Isis associated with? Bina, Netzach, Yesod. Randy Hertz. Peace, man, peace. Nehru says, that's why David, DVD, is just a cognate or analog of TWT, which is Tahuti or Thoth. The line of David is the line of Tahuti. Oh, I got you. Dawood. DVD, TWT, Tahuti, Dawood, David. Oh, that's good stuff right there. That's good stuff. That's good stuff. All right, we're almost done here. Many magicians go astray on that backward journey. Their consciousness assumes forms of larval life that antedated the human. Jeez Louise. Look, man, Shadow Work Master System. Look at that. Look at the module I did on memory and on matter. We get into this, and we are continuing getting into this, because the whole thing is, when we talk about matter and memory, this is data, y'all. This is data. And the same way that you save all them pictures and videos and your phone runs out of space and you got to get a new disk or a whole new phone because everything's filled up, the same thing happens to your slice of consciousness. There's only so much data that you can process or even contain at any given time. Now, time is data, right? So if you look back to yesterday, okay, you can recall that data. If you look back 5 years ago, okay, you got some pictures that can remind you of what was going on back then. Maybe even a song will take you back, or a smell. 10 years, okay. 20 years, okay, now we're starting to push it. 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, right? 100 years ago, what happened? We don't know. We have to take somebody's word for it. 200 years, 500 years. That's a lot of information. Now, in the present moment, right now, you literally can only hold about, 5 to 9 pieces of info at once? We can only process maybe 5 to 9 individual bits of information at once. That's the capacity of our conscious mind. And this is something scientifically proven. I have the books on it. I'm not going to dig them out, but if it's that serious, number one, you can Google it. Number two, maybe in another video I'll talk about it. 2 plus or minus 7, says Maestro. I was going to be generous and say 7 plus or minus 2, but hey, we'll go with that. So if that's how much information that the typical human can hold at any given time, what do you think happens when you're faced with an overwhelming amount of data? We won't be able to keep up with it all, to be able to make sense of everything, to keep track of everything. So what does he say? Many magicians go astray on that backward journey. Their consciousness assumes forms of larval life that antedated the human. Then the ape of Thoth mocks them as they struggle to extricate themselves from a swiftly accelerating reversion of consciousness that finally hurls them into an oblivion. It doesn't stop. It doesn't look. The thing about the stuff here that people don't understand is just because you stop don't mean that it stops. If you flip that switch, get ready for the light to turn on, right? Get ready for things to start moving and shaking. Just because you ready to tap out don't mean I'm ready to tap out. That's how this thing goes. He says, then the ape of Thoth mocks them as they struggle to extricate themselves from a swiftly accelerating reversion of consciousness that finally hurls them into oblivion. So, in other words, that's not to say be afraid of this type of information or don't do it. That's saying that this is, it's when you're in, you're in. It's a 24/7, 365 kind of thing. Even when you're walking through Walmart and trying to figure out which brand of toilet paper to buy, you're still working. It's magic. It does not stop. You don't get a break, even if you want a break. You can't run from it. You can't go to sleep from it. You can't get high or get drunk from it. So, in a way, that in itself is a transformative process. You have to become something greater than what you were to be able to handle it, right? Because if you don't evolve and you don't change, now you're facing something different, right? So it's not, this shouldn't be something scary. This shouldn't be something feared. This shouldn't be something that you got to run from. Like, what is being said here is now you're on the path of evolution and you're facing it head on. You're grabbing the bull by both horns or all three, and now you got to go where it goes. You're gonna land in the spider web. Like, that's it. As a matter of fact, you're already in the spider web. But here's the thing: are you a fly or are you sitting in the middle? That's the choice you got. Are you struggling, kicking and squealing, or are you moving towards that rapidly vibrating point of promise? You decide. No one decides for you. Unless, of course, you've got a lot of rogue programming running around in your unconscious mind. You decide. Maybe she's born with it, maybe it's Maybelline. I don't care. MC Maestro says we're born with it, but upon initiation, we are conscious of it. Sheesh. Well, like I said, it's not something to be feared. It's just, you just understand how the game works, right? Understand how the game works. At at every given time, you're on one side or the other. You make sure you're the one choosing. I love that. Such is the fate peculiar to adepts who, nurturing their animal propensities while in the abyss, assume the form of beasts. I believe we talked about this recently. They assume the form of beasts without first relinquishing the tendencies of the ego to use for personal ends the powers which these creatures symbolize. It's a big thing. It's a big thing. When you shift into state, you gotta let the human shit go. And then when you shift back into human, you gotta let the beast shit go. You don't want to cross the streams. That has some adverse implications. We're talking psychology now. We're talking psychology now. Veronica says there's a spider spot in my house, and I always say hello, Keter. I talk to my spiders too. I still find them terrifying to behold, don't get me wrong, but instead of running from them and screaming like a little bitch, I face them. I acknowledge their existence and I accept that they have a place and a purpose in my life. I don't kill them on sight. I don't whip out the poison spray so I can inhale it as it floats around the house. Nah. Nature, who is far more intelligent than me, created these things. And for whatever reason, created the scenario that they are where they are. Travis Harris says, when you stop applying pressure, you start feeling it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Swami Hoodnigger says, when I experienced ego death on mushrooms, I saw a symbol of a black widow spider. Interesting how my life is synchronistic. I've been led here. Much gratitude. Man, I know that was terrifying. I ain't gonna trip. I don't want to see a spider, but if I have to, I accept it. I'd prefer not to, you know. But if I got to, then it is what it is. Veronica says, big homie spider, just relax and chill. That's why she tolerates the lights. Alligator says, you better morph into a beast when encountering Karam Zone. Exactly, exactly. And remember to come back when you come back. All right, let's finish up here. Let me read that last sentence again. Such is the fate peculiar to adepts who, nurturing their animal propensities while in the abyss, assume the form of beasts without first relinquishing the tendencies of the ego to use for personal ends the powers for which these creatures symbolize. This is the origin of magical lycanthropy and similar occult phenomena. We may thus posit anti-worlds based upon the application of each sephira to its opposite. Anti-worlds. The anti-life equation. We may thus posit anti-worlds based upon the application of each sephira to its opposite, thereby obtaining a glimpse not only of the back of the tree, but of the tree's total reversal in respect of its obverse, which constitutes the world of appearances, our universe. We may in this way formulate not only an anti-world or zone of anti-matter, but also a zone of anti-spirit, represented by Kether inverted behind Malkuth. New concept, okay, I can dig it. But let us not fall into a Cha's error of regarding these speculations as actual facts of spiritual consciousness. Rather, let us use the idea of them as a springboard which may launch us into inner spaces of consciousness that comport, each in their turn, the hell or hole of each power zone. The ancient Finns used a most appropriate word to designate hell, tunnella, a tunnel. In a physical sense, this word implies a subterranean passage. In a psychological sense, the subconsciousness. And in a macrocosmic sense, it implies the subnuclear world of antimatter, the black hole in space of which the mythological hell, with its annihilating fires, is the symbol. Ooh. That's why I said in the beginning, before finally openly talking about the Clipoth and the tunnels of Set. That's why I said in the beginning of that, to find a manga called The Enigma of Amigara Fault. That's why I said specifically to go read that manga. You want to talk about hell? You want to talk about getting stuck in the abyss? Ain't no homie, Sway. Okay, so that is it. That is it. That is it. If you guys enjoy this book, if you like where it's going, because really, he didn't even get started yet. Like, if you enjoyed Dion Fortune, and you know that, like, the first couple of chapters, she's just setting up she's setting the game up, and then about halfway in the book, she gets into it, trust and believe the same thing is happening right here. This is just the pre setup. It's about to get real sticky. There are quite a few books that you guys can purchase. Say hello, Scarlet Witch. There's quite a few books that you guys can purchase that go into the. See, when I have my son over here, something's getting spilled on, and something's getting wrinkled up or scratched, but that's all right. It's just matter. You're gonna find a ton of books that talk about this draconian, typhonian, all this extra dark and spooky shit. Always trace the origins. Always trace the origins. And what you'll find is that often the origins are super expensive, or at least a little bit more expensive than you would pay for an average book. So that helps to keep it kind of out of the hands of just everybody. So somebody else, see, I could come and rewrite this book and then sell it for $100, and people would be like, "Oh my God, this is some fucking crazy shit." But if you read the source material, you find that you're not missing out. One of the things that some of these other folks make you feel is like you're missing out on some deep secret magic. But the truth is, if you can find their source, you realize you're not missing out on anything. They just know something that you didn't know at the time. Obviously, I'm dropping a hint here. Next chapter, Kabbalah of the Primal Gnosis. I'm going to read that. If you got the PDF or the book itself, you can read that. Maybe I'll continue doing this on the live stream. I don't know. We'll see. But, oh boy, life has been interesting. Okie doke. I'm off. See, I was reading Outside the Circles of Time, but then I realized he kept referencing this book. And so I was like, all right, I have to read this first before I continue. So I paused Outside the Circles of Time so that I could read up on this. Okay. You guys have a great evening. Have a great evening. I apologize for the lack of videos as of recent. I'm still doing my thing. Every now and then I got to fade into the shadows, but I always come back with gems. I'm not sitting around watching Martha Stewart. I'm going into the depths of my own hell and making sure that I can endure the flames. Man, it gets to a point where it's like you can only be so scared. You can only run for so long. Like at some point, it's like, man, what else you got? What's the worst? What's worse than this? Like when you really start asking them questions, the shit you was running from, there's no more running. I kind of like pushing myself to that point, like digging around in my unconscious mind, and as soon as I find something that I'm afraid of, or if there's like residual fear, I already know, oh shit, here we go. See, I was trying to hide this from you, but now I found it. We gotta face it. We gotta go into it. Do what I gotta do. Sometimes it takes me out for a few days, but it's worth it, because afterwards, it all makes sense. Okay, have a great day, fellas and ladies. Not in that order. Nuru says, revelations from people who have near-death experience die and come back, and say that there are 4 visuals you get as you die: lattice, cob or spider web, cone tunnel, a spiraling cone tunnel. Be the spider. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the etheric plane and most of the astral plane is actually mapped out. I really truly think that the etheric plane and most of the astral plane is actually just as mapped out as the physical plane. I really do. And that's funny you say that. I've actually been watching a couple of near-death experience videos lately, and specifically, I'll be honest, it popped up on my feed randomly, but I started watching and listening like, whoa, she's describing the etheric plane. And then like I'm watching all these different people describe these similar places, and it's like, yo, either these are secret occultists trying to drop some knowledge, or all these people are entering through the same angle. Needless to say, those of us who do this work on a regular basis, I think we'll be at least prepared for whatever level those people were facing. One was really interesting. This lady was like, she was just in this void, and she didn't realize she had a body. She kind of intuitively knew that she could move by thinking about where she wanted to be. So it was like as soon as she figured that out, she started creating reality, and she started creating a context that she was familiar with. And then, God appeared, and then she had her conversation with God, and all this stuff happened. But the whole thing is, she manifested that, and she intuitively know how to do that. So just imagine somebody filled with fear, doubt, anxiety. What are they going to manifest when they enter that space? I don't want to know. Typhonian, melanin. That's your melanin. By the way, Bobby Hemmett's already been here. Bobby Hemmett's already been here. But you don't hear anybody else talking about this stuff. I'll tell you that. Peace, sin. Wolf in Syrian 777 says Agil's sigil on the right hand. Never realized. Yeah, check it out. Kenneth Benefield says maybe maps are also unique to each person as well. Yes. So what I mean is, I'm seeing that there's a similar context, but the content is what varies from person to person. Just like what Nuru said, somebody might see a tunnel or a web or a lattice or a black hole or whatever, but there's actually a similarity between all those things. There's a similar context between those things. So that's what I mean. If you just look at the context, I think that these places are actually fully mapped out. Now, what you experience is going to be dependent on your memory. Oh boy! All right, I need a new battery or something for my human body. I'm putting this thing through the. I can't even think of the word. Rack 'em, rack bar. But when it came a mighty long way since this. Came a mighty long way since this. Oh boy, a mighty long way. All right, y'all. I'm gonna hold you up. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night. My son fell asleep, but I'll wake him up so he can play his tablet. It's actually better that way. His subconscious mind can get the download. All right. I'll see you guys soon. See you all soon. I guess, yeah. Any questions? Any comments? Anything from here specifically, or anything related to this? And Caesar, if you're still there, I'll link you this. The music I have in the background. I'll post the link in the chat. I literally love this song. To me, this is my outside the circles of time music. I just have this song on repeat because it sounds so otherworldly and exotic to me. MC Maya says the body of light is becoming necessary for this work. Yes, sir. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link to this song in the description of this video. So just wait a few minutes and refresh the video after it's done. You can get the link to this song if you want it. When I say that I've been playing this non-stop for maybe over a week now, maybe two, I'm not even joking. Talk about state, right? Swami Hood nigga says, yeah, when will you continue reading this so I can catch you? Um, I don't know if I'm gonna continue reading this particular one on the live stream. This was kind of spontaneous. I felt that it would be a good idea to do, but I cannot give you a date because if I did, I run the high risk of actually not making that date. But I try my best to give somewhat of a heads up. I didn't really give a heads up this time, but I guess just watch the channel. I tried to live stream around 8 o'clock most days, so realistically that would be a good time frame. But other than that, I just go with the flow, my friend. Ace says non-stop repeat is preferred with some sounds. This has been your staple for the longest, hasn't? I've been able to tap into a very unique state when I have this music playing just in the background, and like when I do start to go into trance, it feels it's a unique trance. I like it a lot. So since I've been doing a lot of this type of work here, just so happens that I've been listening to this music. So the two and two just kind of blended together. Remember like what we said about psychology and whatnot. Memory isn't just what you read in your head. Memory is also stored based on audio, based on smell, right? I reinvested in some more Fruit Loops, so I've chosen Fruit Loops for like some of my more intensive work. So I got my Fruit Loops going. I got this music going. In the background, I got my specific homies, right? Left hand path, right? Middle pillar, Dr. Strange. This is specifically Dr. Strange. And then, of course, Old Palpy, right hand path. Blue. So, like, I have certain things in my environment that help to lock down my state so I can use it on purpose. The same way that most people watch TV or scroll through their Instagram and see the same ads all the time, those ads also tend to influence your state. But the more influence that you have over your state, the more you can actually use it intentionally. All right, maybe I need to get me something that Oh, I do. I do. My alien queen represents my cliphotic work. That's the beast that I must become. All right, everybody. Have a great night. Peace. I love you. This is TK Trav, aka Travis Magus, here with LVX777. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sticking around. Please continue. Do not get consumed by the forces that you work with. Remember, you're the one that directs the flow of the energy. It doesn't direct you. Stay on top of this thing. Wolfen Syrian 777 says you should keep reading this on the future. I appreciate it. As a true black brother, it's difficult to find a vibe like yours. Most aren't at the level or puppets of Crohn's on. Yes, sir. I appreciate that. All right, y'all. Have a good night. Have a good night.